Hi, it's Jeanette here from my home studio, Pottery Ceramics, and this is an introduction to a video that is going to give you an update on what I've been up to with my pieces from my trip with Ceramics by Julia when we went on a road trip. You may have seen the previous videos, so there's 3 in the series so far. It's in a playlist, and it's when Pottery Ceramics met up with Ceramics by Julia. We went to an Airbnb, we did pottery together for a day, stopped overnight, and then we went to a workshop the following day. We each made pieces we brought home and dried them and bisque fired them. I had a bad explosion in mine and I literally destroyed nearly all the pieces. So because of the memories, I very much wanted to have these just to go on a memory shelf. They don't need to be functional, I just want to have them in one piece. So pretty impossible one, a basket that was in about 20 different pieces and a jug with a 10-inch length crack all down the back of it. But I decided to have a go at trying to fill the cracks, build the basket back together and see, is it physically possible to repair such major fails, and can I glaze it, and will anything come out the glaze firing? So it's an experiment, and I'm just keeping everything crossed that there's a possibility I might be able to get these through a glaze firing on my shelf. So yes, it's a lot of time, but for me it's a labour of love, and I'm just trying to get these pieces to come out the other end. So watch the following video, see what you think, and follow me on my journey to see if I get anything out at the end. All right, take care, bye bye.
With nothing to lose and everything to gain, and experiments to see what can and can't be done when you have a massive crack in pieces, I decided to try a recipe I'd seen on the internet and adapt it myself. So this is bisqued stoneware clay, the same that my pieces were made in, and I've ground some pieces up with a pestle and mortar. I'm then actually going to add this to some paper clay that I made a few weeks ago. I don't know what quantities to make, so I'm going to do equal of each, so 3 teaspoons of this and 3 teaspoons of paper clay. The paper clay that I made, I just used some thick slip, a couple of teaspoons of vinegar and 3 sheets of toilet paper, and liquidized it all together. And you can see that this actually has been sitting for a while. You must leave it overnight before you use it, and it's quite a nice gloopy fibrous mixture. So I decided to add 3 teaspoons of this also to the ground up bisque and mix it up. I did have some hairline cracks in my basket before I bisque fired it, and I actually used this paper clay to seal those hairline cracks, and that worked perfectly. Question is, will this now work on this large crevice? Once this has been thoroughly mixed, I then added some glaze. So I just used a white gloss that I'd got left over end of a tub, and about 3 teaspoons again to mix it in. What I noticed is that the minute I added the glaze, it started to go really thick, almost like a texture of a grout that you'd put in your bathroom. Learning from previous experiences, I always label my pots. I decided to first test it on a couple of pieces of the basket weave. So I just added the paper glaze to the edge, but the minute I put it on, I noticed it was drying instantly, which, to be honest, it's on bisque, and then you've got bisque granules in this paper glaze, so I'm not surprised. But the minute I fastened it together, I noticed that it was like an immediate bond, but almost a little bit too dry. My brain's thinking that maybe I should dip the pieces of bisque in water before I try the next piece, but I'll do a couple of tests, see how this works. I'd rather test out on the basket weave because there is a 2% chance that I'm going to be able to get this all in one piece. You can see when I actually put water to the back of it to smooth it out, it had gone rock solid, so that's a good sign. Time to try this out on the jug. This is the important one. So I decided from my previous experience on the basket weaves to actually moisten the crack with water before I added the paper glaze. This definitely made a difference. It almost gave me a little bit more time to get the paper glaze into the crevice. At the bottom, it's very narrow. So as I worked higher up, it became a little bit easier to push it into the crevice. You can see here the horizontal cracks just in between the handle, which I need to come back and add the paper glaze to those areas as well. I built this up in about 5 different stages, layer by layer, with about drying time an hour in between, just making sure that I slowly filled that crevice until it became smaller and smaller and less indentation. It's a very grainy surface, but I'll come back to that later to smooth it out. While the jug dries, I'm going back to the basket weave and I'm going to attempt to fasten 3 pieces together. So I tried to dip the ends of the bisque into water before applying the paper glaze, and this seemed to help. It's really made a strong bond. I've realised it's one thing, however, to put 3 pieces together here, but when I wanted to try and add this to the basket in the basket weave form, that was an absolute nightmare. My main problem was that it was a 3-dimensional form and I had to have supports to hold every element of the basket weave together to fix it into the existing basket weave. It looked pretty messy by the time I'd finished it, but I'm going to give it a go in the firing, you never know. Back to working on the jug again, and it's building up nicely. The crevice and indentation is less noticeable every time. I didn't video it, but I did also fill this in from the inside using a long handled brush. I've then decided to smooth it out a little bit with a stick and use my finger to try and push some of the granules into the paper glaze. That did actually work. I'm going to leave this and then maybe sand it down before I try and add more underglaze. Not as pretty on the inside, but if it stays in one piece, I'll be happy. Ta-da! Literally, yes, one eternity later, it's all in one piece. There's one area that you can see when I turn it over, I couldn't get the pieces to fit, but I'm happy it's just in one piece. Definitely needs a bit of sanding later. That's it for day 1. I'm going to leave these pieces to dry overnight and have a look, check them out in the morning. Looking good, so I decided to lightly sand with a very fine grit sandpaper. It was very, very powdery, but then I did think the paper glaze has got a lot of greenware clay in there, so it's like sanding your greenware. It was very powdery as I brushed this off, and I did want to wipe it with a sponge so that when I added underglaze it wasn't like all dusty, but with it being greenware I didn't want to play around with that, so I thought brush off as much as you can, let's give it a go. I decided to do the same with the basket, thinking this is super fragile, but it actually was really, really sturdy. Mind you, trying to sand down all the edges on each of the basket weaves. Oh, this is just a labour of love, but it's in one piece. It's another matter whether this survives in the kiln with the glaze firing, but brush it off, let's give it a go. As they've survived this far, I decided to add some glaze. So on the jug, my dilemma was, what colour did I use before? I think I did a blend of 2 colours, but I wasn't sure, so I chose my underglaze that was as close as possible to the existing colour. My logic was it's closer than white. Next I tried to recreate the dots just using a white underglaze. This was fairly easy because it was just following the pattern that was underneath. However, now that my underglaze had dried, I could see it didn't match the base colour. But was this because the previous colour has now gone through a bisque fire? Oh well, can't do anything about it now. I'll just continue to add my dots, and it's glazed. I'm just trying to get a piece that will go on a memory shelf. It's not going to be functional, and if I can just get it in one piece, oh my goodness me, I will be so pleased. That'd be a miracle though. Using some old bisque cookies, I decided to add these to the bottom of my basket to create some feet. This basket is still a bit rough and ready with the way that I've joined it together, so I'm just using a glaze Mako Robin Egg that I don't actually have much joy with, so I didn't want to waste one of my favourite glazes. If we can get it in one piece, I'll be chuffed. Decided to do a liner in Stroke and Coat Melancholy to pick up the butterfly pink, just pouring this inside and trying to get a good coat on, hoping this helps with sealing the paper glaze inside. Had a few drips on the outside, so cleaned that up and cleaned up the neck of the jug. Such an elegant shape, this jug. Let's hope this survives after all this work. Worth an experiment though. If you're wondering why I'm going to so much effort on these broken pieces and not just throwing them away, if you check out my previous videos, the collaboration with Ceramics by Julia, you'll see we went on a road trip and we made these together. So this is actually a lot of memories in these pieces, practicing some new surface decoration that we learnt on a workshop that we went to. So all I want to do is get them through a firing in one piece to put on my memory shelf. Not going to be functional, not going to hold any water, just literally memories. So I just add a final coat of stoneware clear to the jug here, and I'm praying to the kiln gods, please be kind, and let this come out in one piece. I don't think that blue's going to match, I've got to be honest. I think we're going to have a bit of a variation of colour there, but I don't care. Just come out please, one piece. That's all I ask. As part of our road trip, Julia and I also went, after the Airbnb, on a workshop the following day for a surface decoration course with Emily Rowley. Now this is the piece that I made in the workshop. I textured the bottom just because I just wanted to try something a little bit different. I like it because it kept really nice and flat as well. And I've just added a stoneware clear on the edge to see how that works out. We use slip in the workshop for this surface decoration, multiple layers using stencils, techniques I'd very much like to try out going forward. 2 coats of stoneware clear to seal this all in. Remember those cookies? Well, I added them to the bottom of my basket as little feet. I decided I wanted to raise it off the kiln shelf a little bit more, as I felt it might slump in the kiln. I'm using a glue gun to add these on, hoping that it will burn off completely and I can remove this second cookie after the glaze firing. This saves me having to try and position the cookies on the kiln shelf when I place it in the kiln. That looks like it's worked. So finally, we're loading it into the kiln. And I've got to be honest, there's not much in here and it feels a little bit like deja vu. I'm adding a bit of silica sand underneath the 2 flat bottom pieces just to create a tiny bit of movement. I'm adding in the oval from the workshop, but I also did a reglaze on a textured piece that was going to go in the bin, but I got a space in the kiln. You can see here as well, I'm trying to find positioning to put 3 posts to add a half shelf in. Finally got the positioning right, get the half kiln shelf in, and then when I place the basket on, I'm thinking, well, if this explodes, is it going to take out my jug again? So I try and reposition the basket so that the area that I had the most paper glaze is as far away from my jug as possible. Come back and check out the kiln opening, which will be uploaded very soon, and let's see if any of this worked, or do I open the kiln to an almighty mess. If you don't want to miss the kiln unload, click subscribe to be notified when it's available.